Formula One on 5 Live.
It's not even been a week since Max Verstappen's record-equalling ninth consecutive Grand Prix victory scored on home soil in the Netherlands. And Formula One is already back racing, this time on Ferrari's territory. The Autodromo Nazionale Monza, and it's the Italian Grand Prix. The big question this weekend is, can Verstappen make history and take a 10th consecutive win? To look ahead to the Grand Prix, I am delighted to be joined in the Monza paddock by BBC Sports chief F1 writer Andrew Benson, as well as former F1 driver Jolyon Palmer. Now, we'll speak more about Max Verstappen shortly, but first to the big news here in Italy today, where it's been announced that Lewis Hamilton and George Russell will continue as Mercedes driver lineup for at least the next 2 years. Hamilton has signed a new contract that will extend his period with the team to 13 years and keep him in F1 well past his 40th birthday. And Russell, well, he joined Mercedes in 2022 and has also signed a 2-year deal. Let's hear from both Mercedes drivers now, starting with Lewis Hamilton.
You're all stuck with me for a little bit longer. So, I honestly, I'm really, I couldn't be happier to be extending with this team. We've had such an incredible journey together. I mean, Mercedes have supported me since I was 13, so such a long trip, and we still have unfinished business. So we are in this together. We've got a lot of work to do to get ourselves back to the front, but there's no place I would rather be.
And the goal for 2024 and 25 is simple, I imagine.
The goal is simple, yep. Setting the target, it's simple. Achieving that target is not.
George, congratulations. I'd love to know what the negotiations were like. Did Toto use a PowerPoint to convince you to stay with the team?
Thank you very much. No, there was no convincing either way needed. I've been part of this team since 2017, and when they put their trust in me to sign me as a race driver, it was always the plan from the outset that this was going to be a long-term relationship, and we want to win championships here together. We're going through a phase where we're not quite where we want to be, and it's good to continue on this journey. And it's just the beginning.
Oh, just the beginning. Exciting. I'm excited to know what that vision is that you mentioned in your announcement. Come this weekend, obviously last weekend there were missed opportunities. Where are the opportunities this weekend?
Yeah, I think it's a good example of you can have a fast race car, but if there's one or two opportunities missed, your whole weekend can change for a positive or for a negative reason. So I think on pure pace we won't quite be as competitive as Zandvoort. I think in Zandvoort we were the second fastest car behind Max, and Monza might be slightly more tricky. Ferrari were really quick here last year, but still we came away with a front row start and a podium here last year. So I think we've got a faster race car this year. We're up for the fight.
Andrew Benson, we wait for one driver contract to be announced and two come along at once. We've waited a while for this. I'm a little bit cynical in my old age. We're on Ferrari's home soil. Have they done this just to kind of steal the thunder?
Well, actually, Hamilton's contract was only completed this week, I understand. The main points, the money, how long it was going to be, were done a month or more ago. But the fine details they've been working on those for a while, so it is a coincidence as it happens. Russell's, though, Rosanna, you are right. His deal's been done for quite a long time. They just hadn't announced it because they wanted to do them both at the same time.
And Jolyon, I mean, we've had that chatter, haven't we, about was Lewis Hamilton going to go to Ferrari? That was back in Monaco, which seems like ages ago now. This the right decision for Lewis Hamilton, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's probably the only decision really for Lewis Hamilton in the end. I got really excited about those Ferrari rumours earlier in the year, I'll confess. And I remember chatting with you guys on the podcast, thinking, trying to work out the logic for Hamilton going for one last hurrah at Ferrari, Leclerc switching to Mercedes. And to be honest, I just thought it would be fun. But the brain says that Hamilton sticking at Mercedes is his best chance of winning another championship. And in the end, there's no real surprise that it's happened.
You're such a romantic at heart, aren't you, Jolyon?
Oh, you know me.
Well, Andrew, the dream, the vision, whatever you want to wrap it up in, how realistic is it that in those 2 years Lewis Hamilton is going to be fighting for a championship? And what happens if it's George fighting for that championship? Do we then see Lewis Hamilton exit Formula One, or will he sign again, do you think?
Well, I mean, the key phrases today that he used were the first one was unfinished business. Now, everybody in the paddock knows what he's talking about when he says that. He means Abu Dhabi 2021, the title that Mercedes and Hamilton believe was robbed from them by the FIA and their race director, Michael Massey. When he was asked about that specifically, he said, I'm not really a revenge person. It's not about redemption. That's in the past. But what we can do is work better moving forwards. So it's clear where his targets are set. He's not getting over ambitious. He even allowed today that it might not be next year, but he certainly hopes it can be by 2025, which is the end of this regulation set. As for whether it's Russell or Hamilton, this year I think he's had more of an edge on Russell than he had last year. Last year Russell finished ahead and won a race and a pole, which Hamilton did neither of, although actually when you looked at the season in detail, Hamilton was still the stronger Mercedes driver on balance. That's been clearer this year, even if it's still really, really close with them. Toto Wolff described this as the best driver lineup in Formula One, and I think he's absolutely right. In terms of overall quality, there's no team in the pit lane that has a lineup like this right now.
And in a way, this snookers the driver market for quite some time now. Somebody like Charles Leclerc at Ferrari, weighing up his options, he might have thought, well, maybe Lewis will sign for one more and then I've got a shot in 2025. Does it mean we're going to be quite quiet when it comes to driver market ruminations next year?
Well, to Jolyon's disappointment, we're going to hear from Leclerc in a few minutes. I spoke to him for an interview this week, and he's under no illusions. He's staying at Ferrari as far as he's concerned. So I don't think there was really that much movement to come in the sort of top line level of the driver market. It's the second level of the driver market that's more an issue, more going into next year for 25 rather than this year for 24.
When was the last big move in the driver market? I mean, it's disappointing not to see a bit of change just from a pure entertainment point of view. It's always fun to see a big name change teams. When Vettel went to Ferrari, when Hamilton went from McLaren to Mercedes, it's just not happening anymore. Everyone's locked into long-term deals. I'm looking at all the top teams and I'm thinking, where is even the future change going to come from? It's all really long established, and that's kind of part of the sport that I miss from the days growing up watching it. How often teams would change drivers. It's just not happening.
Jolyon, I think you're forgetting a certain Spaniard. Third in the championship at the moment.
That's a midfielder, though. That's
not anymore, he's not.
No, okay, and great for Fernando. He'll stay there now till he retires. But it's just... changing in the midfield is fine, and Aston Martin have done well to get to the front, and McLaren as well. You look at Piastri, he's moved to the front, and that's fun. But now they've become established. I feel like even they're not going to be too willing to change their teams as well. It is more the midfielders and the tail enders where you never feel your security in Formula One.
Oh, you're missing the fun.
I think it's a new era of Formula One, isn't it, though? You know, it seems like we're in it. Everyone's learned from Michael Schumacher in the 2000s with Ferrari, and then Hamilton with Mercedes in the 2010s, and they've all looked at it and thought we need to commit to each other, both teams and drivers, and that's the way we're going to get success. That's why you've got the situation Verstappen's committed at Red Bull till 2027. Leclerc's about to commit to Ferrari for at least another 2 years. It's probably going to be longer than that, given that it was a 5-year deal they signed last time. Russell, I think, will stay at Mercedes for, well, who knows, and maybe a decade, just like Hamilton did. Hamilton and Alonso are both getting on a bit, but the way they're both driving at the moment, who's to say when they're going to stop? So it's just a function of the way Formula One works these days, I think.
But you're right. But then surely it worked, you know, the Schumacher halcyon days at Ferrari, and you see the project, but only one or two of these guys are going to be locked into the right team. Leclerc might lock himself into Ferrari and never fight again for a world championship, for all you know. So they're all trying to play the same game, but at least if you look at Fernando Alonso's career before, at least by moving around, he could find a winning formula every so often.
Trying to switch it up a little bit. Well, all will become clear as the next couple of seasons unfold. But talking about this weekend in particular, when it comes to Mercedes, I was interested to hear what George Russell was saying, Andrew, about the fact that compared to this time last year, they've got a stronger car, but perhaps they don't think they're going to be the threatening force this weekend compared to last weekend in Zandvoort.
Yeah, this isn't a track that should suit Mercedes, really. Actually, Alonso was saying that they see, apart from Red Bull, of course, with Verstappen, two teams stand out on their pre-race simulations. One of them is Williams, for whom Alex Albon qualified fourth at Zandvoort. Albon was a bit more circumspect because they had a bit of a shock at Spa just before the summer break, where they thought they'd be competitive but weren't as competitive as they thought. And the other one that stood out, according to Alonso and Aston Martin, is Ferrari. He says short duration corners, long straights. Look at Canada, they were really quick there. He thinks that along with Aston Martin, it'll be Williams and Ferrari who are competing for the podium, not Mercedes.
And of course, gone are the days that you can tune up your engine coming here to just put on a show for the Tifosi, the Ferrari fan. So if Ferrari are the ones chasing Red Bull, could they be the ones to topple Max Verstappen's run of wins? That 10th consecutive win?
It would take a miracle, Rosanna, wouldn't it? I mean, it's actually ironic that the record that Verstappen's set to break this weekend, it's not just held by Sebastian Vettel. Actually, Alberto Ascari was the first person to win 9 races in a row across 2 seasons in 1952 and 1953 for Ferrari. He was Ferrari's first dominant world champion. So I'm sure Christian Horner, the Red Bull team principal, will get a little extra bit of satisfaction about that if Verstappen wins this weekend.
Absolutely. And Jolien, just what are you making of what Max Verstappen's doing? We sort of run out of adjectives, superlatives. I've had to bury myself in the thesaurus trying to find other ways of describing what he's doing at the moment. It is exemplary, but is there a racetrack? Is it this one where it could all come undone?
Look, any racetrack, it could come undone. Exemplary is the latest good word. I like it for Max. Honestly, every week is like the same question, and you know, how good is this performance? And I think we were asking this about Spain time when he did 3 in a row, and then we had just a run after that. I remember speaking to him in Austria, and that was I think 5 in a row or 6 in a row, and it was starting to feel like, wow, this is some record. Now is 9. It most likely will become 10 in Monza, because who is going to stop him? Monza is a good track for Red Bull as well. I'd like to see him start at the back and try and win. He's got so much pace on the whole field that it's difficult to see anyone stopping him, especially I think at Monza, because it's a relatively straightforward circuit. It's low downforce. It will suit the Red Bull car fairly well. And yeah, there's sort of 6 corners. There's not the chance of rain this weekend. If there was going to be a time where it goes wrong, it would have been something like the last race in Zandvoort, honestly, when he's slithering around on slicks in the rain, rooster tails of spray coming up on slick tyres. There's a late red flag. There's a chance for Fernando Alonso behind him to do him on a restart in the damp. That's the sort of thing where you're thinking he'll do well to cling on to this. And he did it because he's just doing everything right. Monza, in theory, it should be straightforward for Max.
I thought you were going to say it was going to be a walk in the park, given that it is situated in the park here in Monza. Of course, some people might think that the obvious disruptor should be his teammate Sergio Perez, but it just doesn't seem to be coming together for him at the moment. And Verstappen leads the standings by 138 points, and he's won 11 of the 13 races we've had this season. Let's hear how Max Verstappen is rating his chances coming into this weekend.
It's a fast track. Of course, you run quite low downforce around here to try and really optimize the top speed, which I think makes the track a lot more difficult to drive. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the atmosphere around the track with all the fans, they're super passionate. Of course, most of them will be supporting Ferrari, but that's absolutely fine around here.
Max, the car is such a rocket ship, but I just wonder, when you go into a race weekend, are you also focusing on the weaknesses? And if so, what are they come to Monza?
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly focusing on the weaknesses of the car. I mean, it's never good enough. We always try to improve the car, but also, you know, for next year, you learn a lot. And yeah, there's always things that can be done better.
Gosh, you're already learning for next year. Scary stuff. In terms of the alternative tyre allocation this weekend, what are the challenges that you think you're going to face specifically?
Just not driving so much as normal. We have to save tyres, so it's a bit of a shame for the fans, but there's not much that we can do. Of course, we can prioritize our practice, but then we have no tyres for qualifying, so that's not what you want. So yeah, for me, it's a bit of a ridiculous thing that we're doing. But everyone is in the same boat. So it's all about managing the tyre sets you have to qualify.
Max Verstappen outspoken on several issues in the sport at the moment. And Jolien, of course, we've got this alternative tyre allocation this weekend. We saw that last in Hungary. On a track like this one in Monza, how difficult is that going to be to get those hard tyres working in the first part of qualifying, the medium in the second and the soft in the third?
I liked it in Hungary, and the drivers were complaining then. I thought it was good. I thought it added a bit to the spectacle. In qualifying, it means that you've got to be on top of it the whole way through. You're changing tyres, you've got to reset your mind and your references. And it means that your practice it's just another random variable into your practice. Which tyre do you do the bulk of the work on in practice? Which part of qualifying do you focus on? And you can be caught short if you don't get the right part in qualifying prepared well. I mean, George Russell was well down the order in Budapest, and Lewis Hamilton was on pole. So I think what we didn't have in Hungary though was just sunny practices. So having 3 hours of practice is the concern, whether people might sit in the garage a little bit more. But if it makes the show better on Saturday, I think it's a good thing. What do you reckon, Andrew?
I think it will mean people sitting in the garage, but you're right, Jolien. It's all about the TV show for qualifying and the race, of course, because qualifying influences the race. If it mixes up the grid, then I think it's a great thing to do. If it doesn't mix up the grid, then I really do see the driver's point, which is, all the people who've paid hundreds of pounds to be here on Friday and Saturday morning, who just want to see the cars going round, they are being a bit shortchanged.
But, you can't. It's very difficult to just say if it does that, then great. If it doesn't, then bad. It's a bit like the sprint. You have to give it a bit of time to work. And already we've had the Hungarian Grand Prix where I think it did add quite a lot to qualifying. It was a brilliant qualifying session in Hungary, and it did mix up the grid then. You can't guarantee that something is going to mix up the grid every time. But what it will do is mean the drivers work harder in practice on the running that they get. And it will be harder for them in qualifying as well, because they'll have to keep adapting, because they'll have to use 3 different tyre compounds. Qualifying on a hard tyre in the first part, it's quite tricky. So even if the result is the same, I just quite like that it adds a slight curveball for everyone.
But don't you think we already have a bit of a curveball here in Monza? We've seen quite big scalps fall early doors here in recent qualifying sessions, with the Parabolica being a sort of traffic jam. Sometimes drivers get it wrong and they're queuing. Andrew, don't you think we already had a little bit of a sort of gimmick here, almost without trying?
Look, I'm not against it. I wasn't trying to say that I was. I think it's interesting to try things, and that's what they're doing. They're trying things. They're trying to mix it up. The same with the sprints. Let's see how it goes. Add in the whole issue with the toe and drivers messing around with that, and with reduced tyre allocation, changing tyres, it could throw a curveball, as Jolien says.
So Max Verstappen is seeking a record 10th consecutive race win. But if he's to do it, it'll be in Ferrari territory. We'll talk about the Scuderia's chances and hear from Charles Leclerc in just a moment. Well, a team hoping for no curveballs this weekend is, of course, Ferrari, racing on home soil. We've spoken about the challenges of this track. They've got a new livery this weekend, a special livery. I always get a little nervous when a team turns up with a different paint job. Can they be proud of the package that they are bringing to Monza, do you think, Andrew, and make themselves feel proud in front of the Tifosi?
I mean, look, they're looking at a podium. That's what they're hoping for. Can they achieve it? Let's see. It's been a bit shaky for Ferrari all year, hasn't it? And they've got a lot of work to do, as we're about to hear from Leclerc.
Absolutely. Well, a crowd favourite this weekend will, of course, be Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. It's been a difficult season for the Monegasque driver, and it doesn't seem to be getting any easier. He sat down with Andrew for an exclusive chat about this season's struggles, his Ferrari future, and his hopes for victory.
So, Charles, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. How would you sum up the season so far? It's been an interesting one for Ferrari and you, hasn't it?
Yes, I mean, well, first of all, obviously it's been a bit of a surprise at the beginning of the season after the end of last season. Obviously, the target was to try and do one step better, which was to win the championship this year. And after the first few races, I mean, we understood quite quickly that obviously Red Bull was in a league of their own and much quicker than we are, especially in the race. We saw in the first few races that we were quite good in qualifying, but then coming to the race, they just were way too quick. And yeah, then we started working on our car. We know where we need to improve. We just need some time, but obviously now looking at the first part of the season, we are still quite far from Red Bull. So there's a lot of work going on. It's been really good in one way to see the reaction of the team to that first part of the season and to see how much quicker we brought the upgrade in the season, and that was a great reaction. And we need to keep that now for the rest of the season in order to catch Red Bull as quickly as possible.
What's it like going into a race knowing pretty much that one person is unbeatable and there's nothing you can do about it? And for you personally, it's the guy you were relatively often beating in the first half of last season.
I mean, as strange as it can sound, whenever I put my helmet on, I still feel like the victory is possible. And this is what motivates me whenever I am at home training or whenever I'm in the car. For me, winning is what motivates me, and it never feels unachievable. Then, of course, realistically, before the weekend, you know that if nothing is going to happen to them, then they are just going to be in a league of their own coming Sunday. But me personally, whenever I close the visor, I still believe in it, and I still think this is something that I can do.
Yeah, no, it seems like only yesterday to me that you signed like a 5-year contract with Ferrari. It was one of the longest driver contracts they'd ever given to a driver. It's not that long now, as it turns out, before the end of that contract. Now, I've heard that, you know, things have started moving inside Ferrari and they want you to stay and you want to stay. Is that correct?
The thing that is correct is obviously I've always loved Ferrari, and yeah, I would love to stay. No discussion has started yet. Honestly, I am not in a rush. I don't think Ferrari's priority is signing me at the moment, which is understandable because we are just all focused on trying to have the best race car as possible, as quickly as possible, and I understand that. So. For now, we are just focusing on the season. I'm sure talks will arrive at one point during this season, probably a bit later on the season, as Fred said many times. There are some jokes here and there, but no serious talks yet.
People outside have said, oh, is the Leclerc Ferrari story still going to be the same as the Alonso Ferrari story or the Gilles Villeneuve Ferrari story, in the sense that they were incredibly talented drivers who loved Ferrari, but it just never quite came together for the World Championship, and people are wondering, is that going to happen to you as well, who you could describe in the same way? Do you ever worry about that? Did you ever think about whether this was the right place to be?
Absolutely not, because at the end, being a Ferrari driver, I think, is a dream for everybody. I've always made it very clear that my goal is to try and be a world champion, but firstly with Ferrari. And I know how difficult it is. We are not in the easiest situation at the moment. There's a big gap to fill to get to Red Bull's level. But yeah, Ferrari has helped me before I got into Formula One, believed in me and put me in the Ferrari seat very early on. And it's always a team that I've loved. So my priority is to win with Ferrari, and this is not my worry whether I won't achieve it or whatever. We just need to work on the team, try and improve it as much as possible, and I hope I can achieve that one day.
Sounds like you have quite a deep connection with Ferrari, is that correct? And if so, can you describe what it is and why you think you feel that way?
I think it's my whole family and the environment also, being so close to Jules so early on, and obviously seeing him being part of the Ferrari Driver Academy, and them helping him reaching his goal. And then obviously they helped me in 2015.
They paid for your career to keep going, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Together with Nicolas. Nicolas Todd was a bit earlier, but and there's just a special connection. I've always been a fan of the team when I was younger. My dad also was a huge fan of Ferrari, and all of this makes it special. But even apart from all of that, I've always loved the team, and I've always had a very special relationship with Italy also.
Do you feel part Italian almost?
I could say kind of, yes. I mean, I speak fluently Italian. It's probably the country apart from Monaco where I've spent most time in my life. Not probably, it is the country where I spent most of my life apart from Monaco. So yes, I've got a very close relationship, and I know the guys back at the factory and here at the track since I am 15 or 16, which also makes it a very special relationship.
And you can read Andrew Benson's article on the BBC Sport website detailing that interview with Charles Leclerc. And Andrew, just listening to him there, it sounds like his commitment to Ferrari is so emotional. Of course, he was talking about Jules Bianchi there. It feels like if he were to cut ties, that would be a hugely emotional moment for him.
Yeah, Jules Bianchi, of course, was his godfather, even though there wasn't that much difference in age between them. Leclerc saw Bianchi killed in that terrible accident at the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix. He lost his father 3 years after that. He's a guy who's both genuine and incredibly strong-willed, and he's remarkably talented. And he's such an eloquent, warm person to speak to. But you're right. I mean, his love for Ferrari clearly goes really, really deep. And I think in that context, it's not a surprise that he has no thoughts about leaving the team, even if a lot of people in this paddock think, he's possibly the fastest driver over one lap in Formula One. And he's going to have to leave Ferrari because they're in a bit of a mess at the moment to win the championship. He absolutely doesn't see it that way.
Jolien, it's interesting, isn't it? We're talking about emotions, and of course emotions will run high this weekend in Monza as Charles puts the visor down and goes racing in front of the Tifosi. And I was listening on the F1 official podcast to Fred Vasseur talking about how his role as team principal of Ferrari this weekend is to calm everybody down. Of course, passion runs so high here, not just with the Tifosi but also at the team. How important is it that Charles remains calm, not just this weekend but also for the rest of this season as he plans his future?
Well, it's always important to try and remain calm. It's easier said than done sometimes when you're a Ferrari driver, and a lot of things have gone wrong for him, and that's the reality for Charles. Particularly last year, I think, when they suddenly were thrust into the championship fight and they just weren't ready for it as a team. And Charles was doing a great job from the cockpit, but the team were making a lot of errors, strategically, reliability, and when you're fighting against Max Verstappen, you get flustered. This year, in reality, there's nothing to play for Ferrari. Neither driver is going to be in the top three in the championship by the end of the season. The team can fight for Aston Martin to be third in the championship, and that's what they'll be gunning for, but that's fairly small fry for them. But Andrew, do you genuinely think that there's no part of Leclerc that's thinking about leaving Ferrari? I know he can't leave now because of the Mercedes news today and what we spoke about at the top of the show, but do you think there was no part of him that was just assessing his options?
Well, he's always said that he wants to stay at Ferrari, and I don't have any knowledge that that's not true. Of course, the cynic in me thinks every driver has to assess their options, but I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive at the age of 50-something after 30 years in Formula One. But as I said, I think
you believe him.
He's a genuine guy, don't you think? I mean, you know him as well. I think he's a very genuine guy, and it seems to me like he's telling the truth.
I agree. He's very straightforward as a person. You do see a lot of pure reactions, but I just can't quite believe that, especially earlier in the season, the team's dropping away. There's more things going wrong for him. I mean, he broke down in the opening race of the season, and you just can't help but think, if we're at Ferrari, you just wonder on what sort of time frame are they going to be able to turn it around to be champions again? But they're just miles away from the pace, aren't they, at the moment?
Indeed, and I think what's interesting as well, Jolien, about this year is that his approach has slightly changed. He was quite passive in the car last year when a lot of those things were going wrong. This year he's not like that. He's trying to cajole the team. He's even criticising the team in the car when he has to. He's trying to take on a leadership role, and I think that in itself speaks for his commitment and his belief that they can get there. It's just a question of how long it's going to take, as you say.
Well, that is just about all we have time for. My thanks to Jolyon Palmer and Andrew Benson. And as always, we'll have live commentary of every session this weekend across the 5 Live network, plus the usual reaction and analysis on the F1 Checkered Flag podcast. The race gets underway at 2 o'clock on Sunday, and you can listen to full, uninterrupted coverage on the BBC Sport website. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.